All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. I return from being stuck with COVID in Las Vegas after doing a convention. Apologies that I could not get to the Devstream right away, but we're here for Devstream stuff. I am mostly better now. There is an absolute insane amount of things to talk about. I'm going to try and go over everything as much as I can. Worth noting, October 18th is when all of this stuff is coming out. So we have 5 full dev workshops that I'm going to be really cliff noting super hard. And then in addition, we're going to go over like just the general Abyss of Dagath stuff that we know is coming. Starting with Dagath herself. Um, this is the new Warframe coming with the update on the 18th. She is like Nabarus themed. She is like kind of a headless horsewoman. Um, and her deal, to go over it really quickly because we have so much to get to, is her 1 basically sends out scythes, very reminiscent of Kalervo's 2, and those will hit enemies. Her 2 is a curse that she can spread between enemies that gets much better with her 1, causing her 1 to deal much more damage when the enemies are cursed. Her Grave Spirit is her survivability skill, where if you have this active, you will deal more critical damage, and it has a cooldown if you die, because when you die, you instead don't die and become a spirit that wants to have everyone die and be killed. So that has a cooldown if you are to die. And then finally, she has Rakali's Cavalry, which is a line of horses that she can send out and, just deals damage to a bunch of enemies in a line, seemingly. Didn't spend a lot of time on Dagath on the dev stream, probably because there was just so much to show off. This was like a 2-hour dev stream. Overall, she looks fine. I feel like there's like synergies that there just like wasn't time to go into with like what she's doing. It'll be interesting to see like how much damage she can actually do, because they were really pushing that like she's a really, really high damage Warframe. And given that we just had Kalervo come out and how good Kalervo is, the bar is kind of high right now. So we'll see where Dagath actually ends up. But she looks interesting. I think her visual design is really cool. In addition to that, she's coming with a signature Blade Whip. Blade Whips are kind of in a rough spot right now. Their stances could be better, but should probably be fine. It's going to have some special effects on it and such like that. The way you're going to get Dagath is going to be through syndicates. You're going to buy treasure maps, essentially, from the original 6 syndicates. Those are going to give you a special mission to go do on Ceres for a new resource. And then otherwise, all of the blueprints are just going to come from her new dojo room, which will also have a bunch of her lore sourced there. Also with this update, Nabarus returns, which is a bunch of new cosmetics, a new Sindana, Sentinel accessories, the Vampire Lotus skin that you guys have probably seen on previous events. That's going to be available for you just to have all the time. For those that would love to have Vampire Lotus 24/7, 365. And then the big thing here is that we just have an absolutely outrageous amount of reworks that are going to be coming with this. There are 5 full dev workshops. So let's get into this as quick as we can. This is really, really like cliff notes. I am doing this in like a very shorthand form. These are really huge document things of like big changes. So keep in mind that you are getting like the feel, the vibe of these workshops, not like every single detail in them. Starting with our new player path, which is of course very important to me, as I'm going to be doing a new player free-to-play through once again relatively soon here, definitely after these changes for sure. So this should be really good for new players. Starting with, flawed mods are going to be completely removed. They will no longer be flawed mods. Broken mods no longer will exist. And Mark 1 weapons are only going to be in the market. That means that from the jump, players are going to have the like real version, I suppose you could call it that, of the base weapons like the Bratton and the Kunai and so on and so forth. So they're going to start a little bit stronger in that respect, and you're not going to have to go through flawed mods and all the confusion that stuff causes. With that, there is some reduction in early mod drain. Specifically, the important one is continuity is going from a 9 drain mod to a 7 drain mod. Redirection is also getting cheaper. So early modding is going to be easier, which is really, really good. Continuity and redirection, those are the 2 that are really important, because those are probably the 2 most important mods for new players, especially given some of the other changes we're going to talk about. And in addition to that, there's going to be a huge affinity increase from Vor's Prize of about 100,000 affinity once you are through that like missions like set. Basically, it's like 15,000 per stage or so. So that's really gigantic for getting out of War's Prize with some levels, having some mods. You will have real streamline, real continuity. I think real intensify. I'm pretty sure intensify was a broken mod that always dropped. You should have a lot of real mods to actually just quickly get in and mod. So that's going to be really huge for new players. Is that like you're just going to have access to much more than you did previously. In addition to that, new players will also get the universal enemy radar of 30 meters. That's going to be for everybody. So we will all now always have enemy radar, which is great. That was already the case for those of us that are always running Animal Instinct, but just having this be universal is certainly no downside. I have no complaints about it. Other things for new players, Wave Rider is going to be simplified, basically fewer challenges that are less annoying. Vox Solaris, which new players do need to do and was extremely hard for them, that is being toned down very significantly. We're talking about like tripling objective health, lowering the level by like a third, doing a lot of things like that. Vox Solaris is a place where a lot of new players would just die and then just be like, fuck this, I don't know what I'm doing. Hopefully this can alleviate that entirely, because it was a thing where I would go get corrupted mods before I would come back and do Vox Solaris. And that's just mostly due to the way that the enemies out in on Venus are tuned. They're a bit more, harder hitting than our regular enemies on the star chart. Also, Saya's Vigil is now going to be early critical path, which means new players are going to have to do Saya's Vigil. Saya's Vigil is pretty short and shouldn't really pose much of a problem for new players, but you will have to do it now as you go through Cetus, because they want new players to be introduced to the open worlds, which makes sense. I don't think that's going to propose any real problems at all. They're removing some of the junction requirements of collecting 20 mods and doing some the more kind of rote nothing stuff. So having a quest that you're going to make sure players go do seems like it's going to be of benefit, and will probably make the early game more enjoyable, honestly, because Size Vigil's a good quest. Cetus Wisps will no longer vanish, so getting the Cetus Wisps that you would need for your amps and stuff probably going to be a bit easier now, a bit less frustrating to have a wisp just fly off into the nothing. They also will probably be just much easier to find, because Cetus Wisps would kind of have they would kind of start to fly away if you got sort of near them, which oftentimes would mean unless you were specifically looking for them, you would never see them, because you would get within their range and then they'd fly away without you even ever having looked at them. So this should make it so that they're just way more common just to kind of happen to see if you happen to be around any of the bodies of water where they hang out. So that's good. Necromech changes. This is a big one. Necromech changes. You're going to be able to buy the parts from Lloyd if they don't drop for 2,500 rep. This is huge. In addition to that, the resources to build the Necromech are now only going to be coming from Deimos. It is Deimos only resources, which should make everything much smoother in terms of getting the Necromechs, because this means that realistically you're probably only going to have to, as a new player, the worst case scenario is suffer through maybe 2 runs of a tier 3, and if you can get it's actually probably of a tier 3 it's only 1 likely. If you can get a more experienced player to carry you through 1 run, I bet you could probably get your full Necromech just kind of off that baseline most of the time. If not, it's going to be very few runs needed in order to get the actual parts you need, and then it'll be, still picking up some stuff, picking up the resources and things to actually build it, but it should alleviate some of the problems with getting a Necromech there. Hopefully we get some Necromech combat changes whenever we get closer to Whispers in the Wall and stuff, because Necromechs are going to be kind of more of their own faction. That makes the actual content of fighting those Necromechs more fun, but reducing the barrier of entry and letting people actually get to new war is for sure going to be of benefit. So yeah, this is all good. I'm really happy to see all this stuff. It should be super interesting. There will be some other stuff that also actually makes things better for new players as well that we're going to talk about in some of these other parts, with the first part, of course, being the companion rework. So this is hyper, I cannot express to you enough, this is hyper TLDR. There will be a full video after these changes go out of me going over everything that's going on with pets. First and foremost, pets will no longer permanently die. There is one little finagle with this, which is that cats and dogs are still going to have a down state that you can revive them from. Hopefully, you will just be able to tap them really quickly to revive them and don't have to go through the really long revive process that pets have right now. Or letting them bleed out over 20 seconds of them doing nothing before they actually go on their cooldown to come back now. So that's a bit of a weird thing, but pets are not going to be able to permanently die anymore. All pets will have a baseline of a full minute and then they will just come back if they have died, which is very good. Also, just general statistical improvements to survivability. About 50% more EHP on every single companion in the entire game. Sentinels, MOAs, yada yada, every single thing going to be harder to kill. Also, new mods to make reviving pets faster. Just an example really quickly, there's one that is if you get kills while airborne, it reduces the time for your pet to come back by like 3 seconds. So like you jump in the air, kill like 3 guys, 9 seconds off of like your pet coming back. That one actually also honestly seems like the best one, at least for pet uptime. So that's going to be good. Some new mods and stuff to like kind of build out like the way that you want to bring your pet back, and there's also some bonuses on those like fire rate and stuff like that. Spare parts is being changed, so there will not be an infinite rare material spare parts farm. You could already kind of do this, and I have definitely said multiple times that if it were ever to be meta, they would change it. Spare parts is just going to be changed preemptively, which is very smart. In that spare parts now is basically going to scan an enemy, and then that enemy will drop an additional drop whenever they die every so often, which is fine. Probably actually going to be used. And then Smita, Charm is going to be adjusted in the future. And by adjusted, explicitly nerfed. Obviously this needs to happen. You can't have a world where we have like 30 companions and one of them doubles resource drops and affinity, and the rest have to fucking compete with that. You can't, like, you're not going to do that. There's not 29 other things that aren't just still fucking that again that can compete with that buff in a game about looting. In order to make the companion system healthy and have like a wide amount of choice between all these different things the companions can do, you need to not have something that is just double the loot, Lamau. This might also go for the dog that doubles loot, which I would also like personally. I would change that. And spare parts actually might be a thing where if we get to the point where Charm does get its nerf and spare parts still exist for all of the Sentinels, it actually might be a thing where we only use Sentinels because of spare parts in some cases. But like that is a very, very careful balancing act to giving players more loot, because that is always the most important thing to like the vast majority of players. So yeah, that's going to be interesting. Basically, there's going to be a pass number 2 after like the dust kind of settles on the companion rework and making it so that they don't die. So the DE can be like, what is useful? What are people using? And obviously, everyone's going to be using the Smita for the foreseeable future until that change, because obviously it's the best one. But outside of that, like the ways that nerf Charm in the specific one aspect of the affinity and the double resources, and then bring everything else up, and we could have a really, really good companion meta, I think. Also, one of the other things that is questionable is that vacuum/animal instinct may not work while the pet is down still. This is a thing that Pablo said on the stream. I'm really, really hoping that they just make it so that your vacuum/fetch just work even while your companion is dead. Just because like really that's like kind of the thing. Because we're still gonna have like kind of just the uptime conversation, right? If that's not the case, like we really very obviously are at the point where like a vacuum uptime is kind of the whole thing for companions, and there could be more, but like it would probably be a lot easier just to be like, if you have a companion equipped, have the vacuum/fetch you have equipped always on. But we'll see how that goes. I've seen that feedback from a lot of people, so maybe they'll change it before launch actually happens. But yeah, overall companion rework, they're headed in exactly the right direction. I think things are going to be really good. It's interesting that they're not already nerfing Charm. I think that's actually super interesting, and I wonder if they just want to see the data from that maybe. But I'm definitely very excited to use a bunch of pets that I have had absolutely not one single reason to use in years for most of them, actually. Moving on, accessibility and heads-up display changes. We have quite a lot in here. Number 1 is character highlighting, customizing visibility for enemies and self. Basically, this means that you can basically put a glow of the color of your choice on yourself, allies, and enemies. This is going to just basically increase visibility so you can see what you are fucking shooting at. If you are one of the players, that there are quite a few of them actually. This is actually not uncommon. Please don't feel stupid or bad. If you look into like a Grineer Galleon and you go, I don't see anybody, and then you get shot right in your face and you go, oh, there he is, I got him. this update is literally for you, so that enemies don't kind of get like lost in the background. That's a very, very common problem for players. So this is going to be helping with that. You can just put like a little tint on enemies to give them just like a little bit of contrast from the background and stuff, which is going to be really good for a very large amount of players. It's really, really good accessibility. And that is also going to carry over into conservation, which is going to be better tracks, clearer icons, character highlights for animals. If you have ally highlights turned on, it's going to apply to the animals that you are hunting, which includes your free hunting animals, not just your specific like point animals. Also, the hunting scope for conservation is going to point you towards like the nearby animal that you can like hear, which is also really, really good. Hunting animals is like the #1 way to get Fortuna rep and also Cetus rep. And on Deimos, it's not the worst ever. Getting Sun tokens can get you a bunch of different things too. So really, really good to have conservation be bumped up there. That's actually going to make a lot of things on the free to play through really, really easy, which I'm looking forward to. And then auto melee. So auto melee, we talked about this a bit before. Basically, you're gonna be able to hold E, and it's just gonna melee. You're gonna still be able to do your combos for like holding back and like doing all that stuff and like pushing forward and all that business that you would do. But you just don't have to mash E anymore. This is gonna be the new default. And the only exception is that that's not going to work on glaive type weapons or the wolf sledge. So any weapons that you need to throw and then explode. It won't work with those, which makes perfect sense. This is really just very seriously just quality of life stuff. There's going to be more coming like with melee stuff. They mentioned perfect heavy attacks as a thing that's going to be like a bit of a wrinkle to like add into melee to maybe make it a little bit more interesting. But this is like a really good change. Like just don't get carpal tunnel. Like I mean, I think very commonly for many years we were all using a thing that's like, yeah, I hold E instead. I just have it set up on my keyboard to do that. And now it's just a thing that you just have in game. Probably especially helpful for people on like consoles because like I certainly know I don't want to mash whatever the like X button is 100 quadrillion million times on Xbox or whatever in order to melee and Warframe. That sounds miserable. So that'll be really good for everybody involved, I think. And then buff debuff clarity. So basically, you're going to be able to pause and hover over your icons in like the top right and see what they are / what they do. This is going to be a longer process, so you might not like get more than just the name for a while, but they are going to be basically filling out that information for like, what the hell even is this buff that Octavia gives me? Octavia gives me armor? Are you for serious? Yes, that is part of her buffs, by the way, for those of you that forgot. So yeah, you'll be able to like see the 100 quadrillion million buffs that Octavia gives you, and also all of the other ones. And then also weapon traits. So special weapon abilities will be clearly noted in the Arsenal UI. So basically, where you would normally see your Warframe stats, like your plus this much health and stuff, you're going to have an icon that's like, this weapon has a special ability. So it'll be very clear that whenever a weapon is special, you will know, which is, of course, very useful. Moving on, we have a quality of life grab bag is what I've decided to call this because it's just a lot of different things. Focus lenses are all buffed across the board. Whenever you pick up the like focus burst thing for the higher multiplier, it's also going to give you a static amount, which is also going to be quite good. So you're going to get like 5,000 just for picking that thing up. All lenses are buffed across the board. It's pretty much double. Honestly, it is a huge amount more focus you're going to be getting from lenses, even though I would argue the lenses are not even the main way that we get focus anymore. So that's going to be really good. Nightwave improvements, which I did not expect, and probably weren't even really needed, but I'm certainly not going to turn them down. We have 3 permanent weekly acts being added for general progression. This is kill 30 Xmas, complete any 15 missions, and kill 500 enemies. These are all really easy challenges. They're going to be available every single week. They are not going to be recoverable, so you will have to do them each week, but they're all exceedingly easy. If you play at all, you're almost certainly going to be completing Xmas and enemies, maybe not 15 missions, depending on exactly what you're doing. But the Xmas and the enemies, that's going to be a nice chunk of Nightwave experience just for anyone who's just generically playing the game at a mid-level. Like if you do, 2 rooms of ESO, you're done with 2 of these, bud. So yeah, playing at all, progression for the Nightwave, really good for new players who like might get a lot of challenges that they wouldn't normally be able to complete very quickly at least. So this is going to be really nice for pushing those players forward, and it's going to be a nice start for the new free to play. I'll tell you that for sure. And yeah, just overall really good. This is also going to come with a really big Nightwave Act audit. So my full Nightwave guide is going to be receiving some revisions. Mostly it's going to be that things are going to get easier, it seems like. And a few things are going to be moving around, a few new challenges here and there as well. But basically, Nightwave is gonna, have some kind of accessible challenges that are just always gonna be there, and it'll mean more progression for you for playing Warframe, which hard to turn down. Seems good to me. It's going to equal out to about a full level additional each week that the Nightwave goes on. So quite a lot there. It'll be hopefully it will never happen that we get a Nightwave that you can complete by only doing these 3 each week. But I'm not going to say it can't happen, because that will only take a little less than 30 weeks. With that, we also have shield changes. These are very big shield changes that are coming in. So shield changes baseline, the 25% damage reduction that all shields on players have is being increased. We are doubling the damage reduction to 50% shield DR. This is honestly pretty massive. That is a 33% increase in survivability from shields across the entire game for all players. That's huge. Mag stonks as a starter continue to go up. So that is really good. Recharge delay adjustment is being added to a bunch of mods. So a bunch of mods that were like, your shield recharges faster now will also make it so that the delay is shorter between your shield starting up. And big important, shield gate changes. So this is a graph of how the shield gate works and how it used to work. So these, like, closer or smaller dots, I suppose, are the partial shield break, the old one. This is 0.33 seconds, which is if you had any amount of shield, just a little bit of shield, your shield would break and you'd have 0.33 seconds of being invincible so that you don't die. So your shield gate happens if your shield was in the middle of recharging. That's how it would always work. And then you have full shield break, which is old, which is a full second additional to that. So 1.3333, so on and so forth seconds. This is how shield gating worked before. This led to a meta, though usually not a particularly useful thing that I would suggest players do, where you would equip a decaying key with the ability to regen shields, and you'd have your shields go down to like 50 or 75 or a very low amount that you could regen the full amount of. So every time you would cast an ability using like the augur mods, you would then regain your full shield and therefore have a full second of invulnerability every time you cast an ability. This obviously is not exactly ideal, and is more, it was kind of like an abuse of the system, but it was an abuse that made sense and was an interesting playstyle as far as DE is concerned, and I think that that's fair. So that we are keeping that playstyle, but with some adjustments, and we're making shield gates actually make you want to build shields. So if you see across the bottom here, we have the scaling shield break. So the more shields you have, the more invincibility you're going to get whenever your shield actually breaks. So it still will not go below the minimum that it was beforehand, but now, even if you have a cap of, let's say it's like, 3,000, you have 3,000 shields or whatever, you're going to get like this full 2.5 seconds of invulnerability. But if you're a Warframe that can generate a good amount of shields, if you generate 500 shields, say you're mag, you're 4, you generate 500 shields, you're going to get like 1.5 seconds of that shield gate, even without fully recharging. So having more shields is no longer a downside. Having more shields is just always an upside for shield gaining, at least up until you're at about like 1,100 shields or so. And then it plateaus off, with Hildren having a like 3.5 second shield gate and such. But yeah, so like overall, the basic TLDR of like what this means is that having more shields good, you will be rewarded for generating more shields. The more shields you have, the better your gate is. The more, like, the faster you can generate shields, the better. Because you would run into situations where, like, say if you were Protea, you would never want to equip redirection because your one would not fully recharge your redirection shield, and you'd only get 33 seconds, or 0.33 seconds. 33 seconds would be amazing. You'd only get 0.33 of a second instead of like your full shield gate if you would equip to redirection. But now you'll get like a giant shield gate, although Protea's one affects her shield gate differently anyway. But yeah, basically shields are better, and the decaying key strategy is being replaced with a new corrupted mod. New corrupted mod basically is going to multiply your shields by 0.2, so down to 20% of your total shields, but give you that 1.33 second shield gate basically every time. So that's going to be what that is. That's going to be a corrupted mod, so it's going to be in the Dragon Vaults. And then in addition, that's going to be on alert whenever this comes out for a full week for everyone to just pick up and just have. It is like a depolarity mod that can go in like the top of your build. So basically moving the decaying key into like, actually still being a downside, You won't want to equip that anymore, but it also means that builds like that can be used in places where there's not gear now. So there's kind of a plus minus to that. It's kind of its own real build now, as opposed to this like kind of weird interaction that some people were using, which was only really useful if you were going to like level 5,000 plus enemies, which most people aren't. Anyway, yeah, it's really good. Overall, this is going to be much, much better for basically all players. Speaking of things that are going to be overall much better for basically all players, but people are going to complain about incessantly, I'm here to tell you why there's no reason to complain about this, is really what I'm going to be up to here. So base Warframe stat modding changes. Mods will now add stats based on base stats after levels. So what this means is that mods like Vitality that currently say 440% are going to say 100%. But the actual stats you are getting are in almost all cases not changed or a little bit better or very rarely just a tiny little smidgen worse in a basically imperceptible way. But mods will do more clearly what they're supposed to. So whenever we look at this here, there's like the before and after. You have 440% more health, and that's taking you on your health from 300 health to 740 health. And for those of us that know how math works, that doesn't make any fucking sense. What this was doing is it's based on the actual level 0 base stats of Excal, which is 100 health. So you get plus 440% health, and then you get, just based off the 100 health, that's what you get, not counting the 200% health you got from rank bonuses. Now, your rank bonuses are just going to be base stats, which the mods are going to modify. So plus 100% health is going to end up with you being at the exact same modded health value of 740, and it's going to make way more sense because it's just 370 times 2, which is plus 100%. So it's basically just a readability update of like, hey, we're going to make it so whenever you put in a mod that says plus 50%, it goes from 100 to 150. It is very purely, mostly just readability and understanding what the hell these mods are doing and why, as opposed to really any statistical changes at all. And all this is going to do is make the game more understandable for newer players. It will also technically make it so that there's some theory that like you could take this and then maybe you could use the blue shards and those could affect base stats because these numbers are now lower, so it would not be as insane. But yeah, that's kind of like whatever. The real goal of this is just to make it so that this is more readable and understandable, and like no one remembers what the actual like rank 0 base stats of Excal are. You're fucking always using rank 30 Excal or whatever frame you are. Like those are the numbers that you're actually going to see, and remembering the baseline numbers is, just like an exercise in nothing. And it also means they can remove this rank bonuses part here, and you can just have the stats be what they are, which is just all beneficial across the board. Just cleans things up, and it's just better. In addition, we have call mission changes. So basically, the TLDR here is that more weapons are to be found in the junk run and prison break missions, which is like fine. And there's also going to be some pickups for more of the currency in those missions, which is fine. I think, the call missions are what they are at this point. I wish there was maybe more to do, but also I want them to work on the other things that they're working on as opposed to the call missions. So, also Archon attenuation changes. So this is kind of a confusing thing because this part of the workshop is that there's going to be more damage allowed through, but it seems like they also want to try again to prevent us from one-shotting the Archons, which is a bit of a weird thing. I personally, I one-shot the Archons every week, right? Like, that's basically what's up, just one-shot the Archons every single week. And it is a bad experience for players that can't do that, basically, because everybody shoots them and then the enemy just takes no damage, and that just takes forever. So, like, they want to make the Archon missions shorter, but also kind of prevent the one-shots. I think that the TLDR on this is that they're not going to prevent the one-shots, but it is going to make the missions shorter for people who, like, don't really know what they're doing in terms of, like, getting those specific builds and killing the Archons very quickly, which should be good. Remains to be seen. Obviously, I'll test it out whenever it comes out. There's not a lot to be done here without, actually going and testing it myself. Two more things, though, that are very good. Incarnate evolution changes in Arsenal. You will no longer have to go to Cavalero to go and change your Incarnate evolutions, which is so, so helpful. You're just going to be able to change them in your Arsenal menu, really easy and quick. You will have to go to Cavallero to upgrade and like your evolutions for the first time, but of course that's fine. And then Steel Path Circuit, you can choose Rivens if you have high intrinsics, basically. Instead of like choosing the Incarnins you already have, you just get some Rivens or whatever. Unfortunately, there's no Riven rework workshop attached to this, but there's already quite a lot already, so maybe we'll get that in the future. But yeah, so yeah, for those of you that care about Rivens, there's going to be a more longer term reward, I guess, let's say, from Steel Path Circuit that you can get into. Finally, let's talk about the Hydroid rework. So, Hydroid rework, there's not a ton to talk about here. A lot of this is going to be I need to actually have my hands on this in order to find out how good it is or isn't. But let's go over it. New passive, Let's Corrosive Full Armor Strip. This is super weird, champ, bud. Really strange to have a passive that's like, we fixed Corrosive, Lamau, we made it an armor strip. Really weird energy that's being put out into the universe today. Basically, any enemy that Hydroid has dealt damage to will have a good version of Corrosive instead of the version of Corrosive that we have now. Very weird, very strange energy. Has really big. I made it so your puncture proc is actually a slash proc Lamau energy. Very strange. What if Corrosive just was good? Crazy. So that's odd, but sure, fine. All his abilities are going to do Corrosive, basically. Charge mechanics on all his abilities are going to be removed, so everything's just one tap. It's full power from what it was before. Good stuff. Undertow is removed and replaced with Plunder. Undertow was his puddle. No more puddle. Plunder, all enemies in range will have Corrosive remove their armor permanently, increasing Hydroid's armor and adding corrosive damage to your weapons. It'd be interested to see like kind of what the limitations are on increasing Hydroid's armor. Turning Hydroid into like an armor health tank is actually kind of fun. But he's going to need a shitload of armor in order to make that a reality, and he will end up very, very vulnerable to slash procs. So we'll see how that will end up going. And then the augment for Plunder is just going to heal him and all allies in affinity range. We should be fine. And then Tentacle Swarm is going to hold enemies still now, as opposed to slapping them all about the place. So yeah, for the Hydroid stuff, it seems like, he's probably going to be relatively usable. Hopefully it is beyond that, but it seems like it's going to be like, the gimmick is that the waters be corrosive. And now it's time for you to be corroded, laddie, or whatever. Something pirate R will happen. Hopefully he's at least fine. Honestly, if he is just very simply not the worst Warframe in the game anymore, I'll take it. Because it has been a very, very long, drawn out time in the briny deep, as it were. So yeah, that's the Devstream 173 breakdown. There's so much here, and I cannot wait for the 18th whenever all this stuff comes out. It should be absolutely excellent. There's so much to test. The new free-to-play through is going to be not that different pathing-wise, but in terms of what we're going to get access to, and like just a lot of the different changes, and especially the very, very new player experience is going to be different. Very excited to see how all that stuff has worked out. Thank you all for joining me for the breakdown. I will be trying to stream tonight, so come hang out for that. It's going to be really chill, though, because obviously, as you can probably have heard over the course of this video, my voice could probably still use a little bit of rest, so I'll be taking it mostly easy. But hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. Very excited for all of the changes on the 18th. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you on the stream. Goodbye. Okay, welcome on in, everyone. It has been quite a month with DenoCon happening and everything, but moving back in, well, we have another convention this month, but thank you to all the patrons, first and foremost, Alex Parnham, Angel SPM, Arbiter Daydream, Benuven, Blotomatic, Brandon Coggin, Brutus Salazar, Dylan Dworsky, Athrain, Fawn, IQ is Thick, James Harsthorn, JC for Science, Jesse Richens, John Lobdill, Joshua Adams, Lou Zanth, Malachx Williams, Minty Ginja, Mitchta, Nerve, Ramoxidate, Tamrielic Wastelander, The Coupon of Death, Homeworm, Waifu Wars, Zack Sainer, and Zeraphir. Much appreciated to all of the super patrons, but also thank you to all of the $5 patrons. There are a ton of you now, and it is much appreciated. And of course, the $2 patrons as well. Yeah, this month, I'm going to be trying to, honestly, there's so many games releasing. I am going to be streaming a lot, but also trying to get a lot of guides and stuff out there, especially for some new Warframe stuff that has been happening. But yeah, it'll be a good time.